Hello! Welcome to the next episode dealing with the Avengers beta of Superhero Gaming with Andrew. So, last when we spoke, I was talking about how the MCU, how it all worked, and my experience and the journey of watching the movies. And last we talked, I was talking about Infinity War and Endgame. And again, I just loved how in Endgame Iron Man, Captain America made up with each other of, saying their sorries and reforming that bond. And I thought that was so perfect and so subtle that it was something like simple little things because there was a lot to be done in that movie of I mean, I know there was a lot of things that people are like, but they didn't do this, they didn't show that. But, with everything they had to deal with, I thought the Russo brothers did really well of showing. And as you can see, it shows, and another glitch here is that their comics, whenever you show the comic cover, it doesn't really show sometimes. But yeah, and I'll tell you more about my deal of comic covers being collectibles later. But I thought it was very poignant of how in Endgame, where Tony Stark, when was visited by his Avenger pals at his house, he said to Cap, it's really good to see you still, and if you like, you can stay and have lunch with us, but no talk about work. That's all I ask. And I thought, wow, they've really come far, and what Tony finally did is when he does come to help with the time travel machine, he he does this thing where he gives Cap back his shield, and he says, and Tony Tony stops Cap from backing out on it. Is Tony, I can't do that, especially where what I've done to you and whatnot. Your father made that shield, and Tony's like, you're why? My dad made this for you. This is for you. This is yours. And I thought that was wonderful. That metaphor of that olive branch extended. I thought that was so cool. And how they trust each other, especially at certain moments in the movies, and where, especially the moment where Tony asked Cap, "You trust me, right?" And he says, "I do," and just took his hand and ready to do it, and a handshake, yeah, let's do this. And yeah, and it was so great of where when Cap passes out at one moment in the movie where Iron Man is kneeling over him, making sure he's okay, and he's like, hey, if you lose this shield again, I'm not giving it back, as a joke. And he's like, come on, buddy, let's do this, and help Cap up. And how throughout the movie they've had each other's backs, and it was really beautiful, especially when Tony made the ultimate sacrifice, where Cap was just devastated as everyone else shattered because he loved his brother in arms so much. He viewed Tony as a brother, and I thought that was just so sweet. I love that, the whole Cap and Iron Man dynamic. And as much as I love the whole Cap versus Iron Man, and growing up I was thinking after Civil Wars that Captain America is always right, and Iron Man, oh, he's a hero, but he's flawed and he makes bad decisions at times. But that's not the case. They're both heroes, they're both imperfect, but you know what, they're buddy pals. They're pals. They just try to do the best that they can. Where Iron Man's more practical, and and he's like, we got to do it this way, while Iron Man's more like spirit of the law and not giving up on your moral code. But over the years they've learned to accept each other and work with each other and their ideals and their perspectives. And you know what? Yeah, I love it, and I totally understand. When my father he said this, I hate it when superheroes fight each other because one, they're superheroes and they're friends, and I totally understand that. And at that time, I was like, I love it when they fight each other. We get to see who wins and who loses, and it's just fun. And plus, you side with whose hero you're on side with. But I get it. It's so much more comforting and awesome, and more personal when you see them as brothers, where they love each other, where they're there for each other, and yeah. So yeah, that was wonderful. Like seeing those dynamics, and yeah, and how Endgame, you not only got to see like Thanos die once, but die twice. I thought that was genius, and not only Thanos came back, but not as his last time we saw him in Infinity War, but in Endgame, where he's this bloodthirsty guy who has this drive and he just honestly doesn't care. And I thought that was so perfect, because especially to raise the stakes, because when I first heard of the movie and also the concept, I was like, I worry this movie won't have the high amount of stakes as the last one did. And you know what? I was wrong. I was totally wrong. And do you know what I learned recently? Hulk can be in the Hulkbuster for this game. And I didn't know that. And I'm like, that is so cool. I ought to try that out sometime when I get the game. But back again to the stakes and Endgame. I thought it was like, you know what? Yeah, I thought that was like totally perfect. Like, kill old Thanos in the first part of the movie, make it where the heroes have failed twice, and where it seemed really hopeless. And because any part of great story is where heroes are going against like huge, almost unstoppable odds. That's what I love about stories like that. Because it's not fun when it's like, oh, hey, the villain's dead, easy, easy. But in this case, anything with Thanos is not easy, even though he died. Because in the end, he still won, even at the beginning of the movie. And to see a post-apocalyptic world was like so haunting, because, when Wanda gave Captain America and Black Widow and Thor visions in Ultron, Age of Ultron, it all dealt with Thanos' coming. Speak no evil, hear no evil, say no evil. In which even just people in the background, when Ant-Man was trying to talk to a kid, like when he comes back, he's like, what the heck happened? And the kid just wouldn't say a word of just how devastating it was of everything that happened. And there are people in which, you don't hear about it being said because it was so horrible. And for the see no evil, they just fade away, and you're looking for them, and you don't see them anywhere because they were dusted. And I thought that was just genius. Just of taking that form of like old parables, old like sayings and stories, and applying them to movies and stories like these. I just, again, genius. And what else? And how Vision, in which it was true again in Ultron, that Thor had a vision that Vision, the Avenger that died at the end of Infinity War, he was where all hope was fading with him at that last moment, because he had the last stone that Thanos needed. So, yeah, and what else? And it's true, it seems like, what is there more to lose if they're going to do a time heist? They have so much more to lose, especially with, like, Tony moving on. He has a daughter, and he's married, and he doesn't want to undo all that because, even though movie rules of a time travel don't apply here, but still, you don't want to do something that you'll heavily regret, like altering things. But yeah, and I thought it was so sweet. I loved Tony as a dad, where he has a daughter named Morgan, and that just killed me. The whole movie, I just love that. I thought that was so poignant, where his full arc has come, where he started as this jerk, total jerk, and he ends as this guy willing to lay his life down on the line for everyone else and put everyone else's needs above his own, like literally without his ego or anything in the way. And he makes peace with his father, where for the longest time he hated and loathed his father, where he learned to really appreciate and love him and understand why his father was what he was, because people needed him. Where people needed his dad just as much as people needed him, and he realized, despite that fact, in which that was one of the problems with the first two Avengers movies, that the Avengers needed him, it seemed like, versus the other, instead of the other way around, in which it did acknowledge that, in which Tony needs the Avengers to stop them, to humble him, to reel him back in line, and sense of a family and friends. And I thought that was really cool. And Captain America's arc of he starts out, in which I find it so funny. Iron Man, Captain America, their arc starts at the polar opposites of each other, and at the end of their arcs, it's the polar opposites of where they went. Where Captain America went from being the guy willing to put his life on the line to willing to have a life and taking care of his needs and his happiness. And I love that, and I wish that comic books would apply the storytelling that they've done for the MCU movies into the comic books. I mean, I remember when Infinity War came out, at the time when Dan Didio worked at DC, when he was one of the head honchos, he said, this is what comic books should be doing. It should be telling these kinds of stories with these kind of emotions and whatnot, and have these kinds of character moments and stakes. And, I'll be honest, I agree with him. And, and the other stakes that there are, like, one, not losing his daughter, not losing his family. And two, of, like, you need the time suits in order to, to not de-age or grow in age and die, basically. Like, go back from never living to dying. I thought that was clever. And, oh yeah, this is me. I was like, where's the Hulkbuster armor? And then I'm like, oh, here it is. Daddy likes. Oh, come on. Get in there, sucker. Finally did. I love playing as wearing the Hulkbuster Iron Man armor in this. It's genius. Thank you, Crystal Dynamics and Marvel Games, for making this game so awesome, and for bringing Hulkbuster in here. But, what else in terms of stakes? Of, like, basically, they have to bring everyone back, even though the world has moved on, they haven't. In which, that is, like, pretty compelling of, like, the world has given up, and they've moved on from what has happened, but the Avengers, they don't. And, what else of stakes of, like, literally Black Widow died to get the stone, and I argue that from her sacrifice, she would have been worthy of lifting Mjolnir, the hammer. Same with Iron Man. That's just me, because the sacrifice that they just put down, just, especially for Clint, who he felt like he's worthless now, and he felt worthless because, again, reverse roles, where it was Hawkeye that brought in Black Widow, and Widow had to redeem herself, and she viewed herself as an irredeemable killer. And man, I'm trying to think what else there is. Uh, and Hawkeye is the one that was the one to help shoulder the burden and help him to transition back into being a happy, light, normal human being and just love themselves and do good. In which, in the movie, again, reversed, where Hawkeye became Ronin. That was awesome. I love the character of Ronin, and I love the costume. It just, and I totally understand. I was bugged that they didn't do the whole Batman eyes like they did for Black Panther for Ronin, but I get it. Because, one, it just doesn't make sense in that world that was set up. But it was so cool. And how Black Widow's like, you need to be with your family and love them because they're going to need you. And I thought that was so heroic, and I can't wait to see the new Black Widow movie. And another stakes is when Thanos of that time, 2014, knows, and he comes to hunt them down. And, yeah, and there were, oh boy. Yeah, I just thought it was so neat. And the movie was an overall celebration of the whole history of the MCU, of how far the creators and the fans have come. Touching upon great moments where we've seen in the movies, and also moments of where they were in their journey, and history, moments in history in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Again, just genius. And this is just me deciding, oh, do I want to, or maybe I'll just buy it or something like that. Sorry, I'll be talking to you so that way it'll be easier for time to pass by. But yeah, again, and there were things in Avengers Endgame that mirrored of Infinity War, in which Infinity War ended where Thanos talked to Gamora, his daughter, in the Soul World, in the Soul Stone, and talked about what the cost was, where Thanos is alive, he killed his daughter, and killed half of everyone in the universe. Or in the end of Endgame, Tony Stark, as a pre-recorded message, talks to everyone, talks to his little girl, Morgan, and says, he saved everyone. He brought back the 50% that were wiped out and made it where everyone would be safe from Thanos. Because Thanos threatened to, not just kill the 50% that he took, re-kill them, but to kill everyone on Earth, and reshaped it in his own image, in which that's terrifying. Even bigger and more, it's worse than what old Thanos did. And basically, Tony, he saved the world, saved his daughter, basically, and brought back the people, and he goes over the cost of him losing his life, and he says it was worth it, and he says to his daughter, I love you 3000. And again, the dynamic between Iron Man and Thanos is so interesting, because one, they respect and fear each other, because Thanos feared Iron Man because he's Iron Man knows I'm out here, and he's going to prepare like no other. It doesn't matter what kind of power he has the conviction to do whatever it takes to stop me, while and Iron Man is terrified of him, of knowing he's out there, and that there was more alien threats, and had to step up his game to save everyone. He felt like where he had to do everything he possibly can, no matter what the cost. And Thanos respects him, and Thanos, especially old Thanos, like treated everyone as if he's their dad. The dad is like, I'm gonna give you what's best for you, even though you don't like it, and value them for their traits, heroic traits, or despise them for their traits. Like there are moments in Infinity War where Thanos is like, I noticed. Oh, sorry. With Loki, he's like, oh wow, you have an undying loyalty to me, just calling out his hypocrisy and lyings, and despise that. And with even though it wasn't really the Collector, the Collector is like, would I ever lie to you? And he's like, of course you'd lie to save your own skin, because he values traits of heroism, because he views himself as a hero, in which he's not. And with Star-Lord, to honor Gamora's wish to kill her, even though he didn't get to, that he said to Peter Quill, I like you. The fact that you're honorable of keeping your promise to Gamora and willing to do whatever it takes. And willing to be a hero. And same with Iron Man and Captain America. When Captain America was holding Thanos back with every fiber of his being, in which Thanos is this guy really is he really that crazy, willing to do whatever it takes to stop me? And he sees that and he's like, you know what, good. This guy is a real true born warrior, and I respect that. And and that's terrifying, especially where he just goes with the Infinity Gauntlet, goes through the heroes like butter. And when Thanos does come, the younger one in Endgame, you could just tell that, true, the original Avengers are back together again, but it's still not enough. And that no matter the good things that happens, it's still not enough. I mean, Thanos is such an intimidating villain that even the Hulk was afraid of Thanos. And that's one way to cause great fear to the heroes and to the other, and to the audience. Take someone who is such a big gun like the Hulk and make him afraid of Thanos. And Thanos utterly defeats the Hulk. So yeah, that's really cool. And what else? And there were great moments, like the hero comes to save the day moments, which mirrors what did it mirror? Of Thor coming to Wakanda to aid them with Stormbreaker, in which it's the other half of the heroes that died, they came back through the portal scene. And I gotta be honest, I cried during that moment, and I wanted to scream so bad of cheer of that, but I just held myself together. It was just so awesome. And just seeing Cap cry of you're here, we did it, of help is here. Because before that, there was a great moment where Cap was all on his own, shield broken in half, just like in that vision that Tony had in Age of Ultron, that Wanda gave him. And again, just like in the Infinity, it's hard to remember which Infinity book it was of the comic, but it was Infinity Saga, or I don't remember. It's where Captain America goes up to Thanos, even though he's the last guy standing, not afraid to put his life on the line. And this was shown and paid homage to with reverence in the movie, especially Thanos, and when the rest of Thanos' army came, because the Avengers were just the Trinity, Thor, Cap, and Iron Man were just struggling with young Thanos, and even though Cap sees, this may be the end for me, and we may lose again, but he's like, but I'm not going to go down without a fight. I'm going to do whatever it takes. And I thought that was awesome. So many great moments in that, and yeah, I've heard the criticisms, and I'm like, sorry, but no. I respect you and your opinion, but I totally disagree. No. Where people say, there's too many climaxes in that movie. No, there's not. There's great turning points, great beats between hope and fear, in which that's what movies and stories do. Like, oh, good guy has something up his sleeve. Bad guy throws that one plan out the window. Oh, the cavalry came. And then, bad guy just got, back on up, and he has the upper hand. And then it's like this, it tilts back and forth of this, what's it called? Of the scales. But yeah, it's really cool. And I love that. I thought that was perfect. At first, I thought, and I hated myself for thinking of that, thinking, oh, that's corny and obvious. But no, it makes sense of when Iron Man, when he had the Infinity Stones, and when he went, I am Iron Man, and dusted away Thanos and his army, that, I thought, oh, of course, like, that's lazy writing, but I apologize for that. That was stupid, because, you know what? That was perfect. No other line would have worked. And the way that was delivered by RDJ was perfect. So yeah, I apologize. That was perfect. I realize, and I've been growing out of this of like, oh, that's easy writing. I could do better than that. Oh, please. Not even tough enough or even original. And I realize, you know what? Everything, every single work, either if it's like works of like short fiction or historical fiction or anything from video games to movies to art, they're all connected. They're all built off of each other. It's basically, and I read this in a book, like you got to view it as like all the writers and all the creators all in one room together in a circle, and they're all working with each other. So yeah. And I just realized you gotta enjoy and love it for what it is, and stop expecting like perfection or this or that, and just because you know what, it was really good. I loved how it was, and I cried, and there is beauty and an absolute, because you know what, there's beauty in just doing something so simple and poignant that just makes sense, in which it makes everything easier and come across easier. Like, for instance, the Avengers weren't battling like Thanos when he was using the Infinity Gauntlet, because, again, he went through them like butter. But, and even the creators, the filmmakers, were like, man, this is going to be so difficult of, like, how are we going to show this on screen of them fighting Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet complete? And then it's like, don't just show it, like, have the tension of be like, do not let him get the gauntlet back, and just one use of that power of, like, all together, it's just one snap. That's it. And I thought, again, just simple approaches to storytelling, simple ideas to complex problems. Again, it's a beautiful, beautiful ways to fix problems. And I thought that was smart, that after the movie Endgame, that Spider-Man Far From Home would take place. Because apparently there was a contract deal or something. It's like, where Sony's like, we'll do another Spider-Man movie with you guys set in the MCU, only if it makes $1 billion, and the movie made $1 billion. First Spider-Man movie ever to make $1 billion. And yet Sony still treated Marvel Studios and Disney like crap, and like wouldn't return their calls. And I'm like, Sony, what is wrong with you? I mean, don't you like, where is like the point of like treating people with respect? I mean, I've heard all kinds of stories and whatnot, and I'm just, wow. And their so called, whenever they try to do fan service, is not actual fan service. Because I feel like they treat the audience the way I felt like Warner execs treated Batman fans with like Joss Whedon's Justice League. Not to take away from Joss Whedon's creativity and his genius, but also with like Batman Forever, Joel Schumacher's Batman run, in which I hate to say this, but I feel like that era of Batman with like Batman Forever and Batman and Robin is like the like let's make Bat fans are schmuckers, are schmucker fans, in which just basically like made it goofy and silly, in which I feel like that's what Sony does, and I'm like, you don't treat us or the with respect, you just want our money. While the MCU and Disney, they are passionate about everyone treated with respect. The creators do their work, make incredible pieces of work where the art speaks for itself and where the money comes last. I just like, that is the way that it should be done. And I do hope, and this is just me, and I do see it where it is a possibility, where Marvel gets back every single rights of like Spider-Man, Hulk, to like do the movies, everything that they want, and Sony Animations can still do the Spider-Verse movies. And again, I'm just like, as soon as Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse did well, and this is me going away from the Avengers for a bit, but when they're like, we're going to have this whole entire universe of movies of like everything tied together. We're going to give Madam Web her own movie. We're going to do all kinds of movies. And I'm like, again, the same thing they tried to do with The Amazing Spider-Man, but yet failed horribly. And I'm like, I don't believe you guys. You guys are all talk. And I'm going to be honest. Sony execs are a bunch of morons. I mean, yeah. And I was so heartbroken to hear that at the time that the Spider-Man MCU deal fell apart, all because of Sony. And that Sony is like, oh, we're going to hog all the money and do this and do that. But, and you can tell that like people like Tom Holland and almost all the stars and everyone were on the side of Disney of saying like, Sony, you suck, even though they didn't straight right say it, because it was like subtle things they did, like how Tom Holland unliked Sony on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter and unfollowed them. He didn't really say anything because he wanted to keep his job and he was a professional, but still. And thank goodness that Bob Iger and Tom Holland, it was really Tom Holland that saved Spider-Man and brought him back to the MCU. That Tom Holland called Bob Iger and said, I just want to thank you for everything you've done for me, for giving me a chance, this role of a lifetime to be Spider-Man, and just everything you've done. I just want to thank you. And Bob was so moved by that, and he says, we ought to do this for the fans. And it was him, because of them, that Spider-Man was back in the MCU and everything was back in place. Perfect. And that just shows Disney and Marvel care. Sony only cares about making their own IP and making their own money. And I'm just like, whatever, Sony, you suck still in my book. I will not forget what you and Avi Arad did to like with the whole, screw the things up for Sam Raimi and us on Spider-Man 3 and the Amazing Spider-Man trilogy, in which it's not really a trilogy, in which they stopped making that franchise at the second movie. And just, And also Venom, in which it was still a good movie, but again, Ruben Flesher, the director, he looks like a man who's been through hell making that movie just to please Avi Arad. So I'm like, you know what? Yeah. But, I do look forward to the day because, you know what? Sony are not going to be holding on to the rights forever. I mean, and I got to be honest, they, on the most part, make sucky movies. And it does show. Except for their animation department, only the creators are the ones, especially of the creators of the Spider-Verse, I trust. I don't trust the producers, the execs, none of them. So, back to that. And again, I thought it was perfect of like how Spider-Man MCU, where there was this poster at the end of the movie. It's like 1, 2, and 3. Wait until you see what we got for 4. You'll love this. And it was a message of like phase 4, and also Spider-Man is going to stay a whole lot longer than past movie 3. And I thought that is going to be awesome. And basically how the movie was handled is like Peter dealing with everything and everyone dealing with what happened after Endgame, and setting up for what was next with like Peter Parker being exposed as Spider-Man, and Sword, which is it's an alien okay, it's a spy agency, but it's for the cosmos and for the cosmic part of the Marvel universe and for aliens to prevent like Thanos from ever happening again. So yeah, in which Nick Fury spearheads that. And and it was really comforting to see like Happy Hogan, John Favreau, that he plays as like Peter's father figure, and he's dating Aunt May. I love that. That is just so perfect. And I hope that Aunt May and Happy Hogan, they do get married. I'm telling you, Marvel, please make that happen, because I do love that so much. It is awesome. And how Happy is like fills the role of being a father that Tony left behind. And I would love to see in the future films, if it's possible, like Peter meeting his, being a big brother to Morgan. I'd love that. Please do that. And have Pepper come back and, yeah. But Happy and, Peter. They talk about Tony's passing and how Peter's like, I can't be him. I can't be Iron Man. People need the next Iron Man. And he says, you know what? Here's the thing, kid. Even Tony couldn't be the Iron Man that everyone expects, this perfect hero. He could only be Tony Stark, in which that's the case for the Marvel heroes. They can't be their alter ego to a T. They can only be, again, their alter egos. And again, just so heartwarming, and especially in the message that Tony left for Peter on the note with the glasses, like, to the next Tony Stark. And I love that. And I thought it was so great how they did things different for how they changed things up for Spider-Man's world of like MJ is not really Mary Jane, it's Michelle Gonzalez. I can't say hers. Gonzalez. I'm sorry. But and Zendaya plays as her, which is genius. And what else? But I'm excited for what they have next with the Eternals, in which I think that's gonna like heavily tie into like Thanos's people that were on Titan and died. That'll be cool because they are related, the Eternals and Thanos. And what else? Because I remember seeing this concept art and it's haunting. It's like seeing like Voldemort as a kid, like he's still a messed up, screwed up little human being, even before he turned into a full on monster physically. Where there's a family portrait of Thanos as a son and a family portrait with his parents. And what else do I want to mention? Yeah, the Eternals. I can't wait for the Disney Plus shows like She-Hulk, uh, Moon Knight, Miss Marvel. Hang on a sec. But yeah, I think that is genius to use Disney Plus to take advantage of that, because you know, as much as I loved Marvel's Agents of Shield for the most part. I didn't like it where they went to the future and they were basically slaves. I hated that part. That was really dark. But and I love Daredevil. I did not like. I'm sorry. I appreciate story wise of like Jessica Drew and yeah. I just did not like it and Luke Cage and the Iron Fist just for how dark it was and just how far they were willing to go of like message wise. I mean, there are things that I was like I would not have gone through that. I'm the kind of guy who's like, okay, yeah, sure, you can do mature things just as long as you bring it down where, basically it's somewhat family friendly. And, and everything's different, and that's okay. I'm not saying do everything where it's all family friendly. I'm not saying that, of like outlaw everything. I'm not that kind of guy. Please know that. It just, not to go to such extremes of like having like just straight up hardcore rated R stuff, or even go beyond that, because I hate that. But and also, so you know what? Yeah, and I'm glad Disney purchased Marvel, because I was worried at first if it was going to be like when they owned Power Rangers at one point, in which they were like, oh, we got Power Rangers and we got Fox Kids and the IPs, but turns out in which the focus groups really didn't like Power Rangers because the parents are like, oh, it's too violent and this and that. And again, you already know the story, or I think I told you this. I hate that of like the whole appropriate police thing and like making like things on TV shows like to the point of like making kids or whatever feel bad and saying video games are bad for you or this is bad, or shaming them for what they like. I hated that. And I've had, again, I mentioned this, friends' parents where they're like, yeah, we don't really approve of such media. And it's like, how do you like that? That is so violent. And their kids end up like watching like hardcore rated R movies like Silence of the Lambs or like other R movies like that, and like break the down fence. Not only break it down, but tear it down with like Galactus's shoe. That's extreme, but yeah. And what's funny is Marvel is now accepted by Disney and bought by Disney. Same with The Simpsons, in which I would love to see their reactions of like, oh wow, Disney bought this. Okay. Growing up, I was like constantly crapped on for like my love of video games, comic books, superheroes. So yeah. And back to Power Rangers being owned by Disney. Disney really downplayed Power Rangers, would even put the whole Disney's Power part on Disney's Power Ranger. And Power Rangers like really suffered, and they would like left it as the black sheep of Disney's family. And And they sold it back to Saban, who created Power Rangers, in which he's a genius, but again, I'm not a fan of him as a human being. The fact that he was willing to, one, screw whoever he collaborated or worked with that made Power Rangers what it is today. I mean, I've heard things like how underwhelmingly, how underpaid the original stars of the original show were. I'm just like, that is wrong. And how he like turns on people just to make more money. I'm just like, that is cruel. But you know, if you're listening to this, Saban, you ought to make it up to those people that you screwed over. The really nice people, especially that nice lady who was the president of Fox. I thought that was awesome of her. That she not only stuck up for you and took care of you, but the fact that you turn your back on her and so many other people, you ought to do better, man. But, oh, what else? Um, but, yeah, so, yeah, I was worried of how, what kind of changes Disney would impose on Marvel. And, thinking about it, and I noticed these changes, and, they're not so bad. I mean, all things considered, like, I don't know if it's, like, required of, maybe this was gone away, in which there's Disney references in the Marvel movies, in which, okay, yeah, sure, just do that, like, with Age of Ultron, is like, there's no strings on me, in which, that's fine. And, or Star Wars, with, like, the hand cutting off thing. But, Disney, Star Wars, oh yeah. But there were other rules in which, you know what, I can totally see that, and I'm totally, that's workable. Like, no highly suggestive content or on the screen, like, very, like, sexual. None of that. And another one is, like, no smoking, in which, again, that's totally fine. And that came from, because Walt Disney, even though he smoked, he didn't want to endorse that bad habit to the audience, especially kids of Disney. And I'm like, I totally applaud and respect that. Especially for Disney, like, sticking true and staying true to Walt Disney's vision and staying true to the spirit of it, of Disney, in which, again, perfect. And, Disney, other than that, just, they're like, okay, you can do the stories you want to do, just please don't make it too scary, too mature, like Extreme R, and just, I think that's reasonable. And they were able to do great works with that, and Disney backed them up financially. Because, I honestly believe that Marvel Studios, as wonderful as they are, they wouldn't have been able to make the Avengers movies and properties that they got to make without Disney. So, yeah, I think, again, that's awesome. And I think they kind of learned their lessons from Power Rangers, because even, and I hope parents realize, Power Rangers ain't so bad, because there are still, like, scary, horrifying moments in, like, the Marvel movies that aren't in Power Rangers, that makes Power Rangers look like preschool almost. But, not saying that it is that as like, oh, it's childish or sucks, but again, like, humbling the parents and those groups of like, oh, we don't want our children to turn into psychopaths or killers, and and I always hated that, where people with easy explanations saying like, it's because of these entertainment stuff that our children turns into killers or whatnot. Again, so stupid. So stupid. So, sorry, my rant is over. So for the game, I want to go over how I love the dynamic between Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, and Bruce Banner, the Hulk. Because it's over the ideological issue of, like, powers, superpowers, especially people with superpowers, are dangerous, and should they be held in check or should the powers be taken away against their will? In which they have that debate, even though not like outright, but through storytelling of like Bruce Banner thinks in this game the Avengers and more in line the Hulk himself are dangerous. And he blames himself for what happened on A-Day and blames the Avengers. While and that Hulk thinks Bruce Banner thinks they should be held in line, while Kamala and the others are like, no. It's like, what happened on A-Day was the bad guy's fault. It's not ours. We can't help for how we are being different, which is basically an X-Men theme, and is like, we ought to celebrate because... And she says, your differences as individuals is what makes the Avengers so great. And you know what? That is true, especially for any team. And I do agree with that. And, I love those kinds of stories of, like, the morality debate. Yeah, I fell in love with that with, like, the movie Batman Begins. I'll tell you more about that later when we're doing when we do the Batman Begins video game. But, so that's checked. And I remember reading on Brian Michael Bendis' Tumblr where he said, there are differences with, like, the Avengers, the X-Men, and the Fantastic Four on a broader sense, in which I do agree, but yet, at the end of the day, they're still, like, a group of people that are a family unit that love and support each other. And, but yeah, Fantastic Four, they're a family, basically. That squabble and whatnot. X-Men, they're an organization. They're a X-Men is a movement. They're a movement, while the Avengers, they're an organization. So, and I find that, and I do agree with that, but again, I love, because I saw in the special features documentary of an Avengers animated film where, oh yeah, that's right, and you'll see that in the later videos where I got Hulk Smasher's pickaxe things for gloves. It's really cool, especially the Iron Man Hulkbuster version. But, where Kurt Busiek, a writer, he said, what's great about these characters is, they shouldn't just be a superhero team and just leave them as that, just one-dimensional, because these are people that they get married and their teammates would participate and join in on the wedding, or some of them would even be the one that would be the priest that marries them, in which, again, genius. Make them more of a family where they deal with things, they have dinners together, and they support each other through their trials. I mean, I've seen that in the comic books where Captain America has helped Tony Stark with his alcoholism. Is like, no way, you're not going to be a drunk, because I've had a father who was an alcoholic and who used to abuse me and my mother when we were kids. And, Cap helps him out. And also Cap teaches him how to do some basic moves. Not like be a special martial artist, but help him out. And how Miss Marvel, Carol Danvers, today's Captain Marvel, she's an alcoholic. And her and Tony are each other's buddies to, like, make sure that they keep each other sober and help each other out. In which, I love that. Again, the genius of it. Where you get to know more of them as human beings. In which, originally, why I didn't like DC when I was a kid as much. Though I liked it. It just, the drawbacks is, like, they constantly stay static. They don't grow. They don't change. Especially for, like, Batman. Like, he ends up just being a grumpy guy. No change. In which, I know that they change that down the line. In which, they shouldn't be static. They should be changing, growing as human beings. and should be focusing on the human side, the alter ego. And you know, I just love that. Where like Superman, I guess one of the things when I was a kid why I didn't like Superman, at one point I still liked him, but like I thought he was boring. Like, you know, Superman can take care of everything with just his brute strength or whatever. But, you know, that's not how Superman does things. He does things diplomatically, and he doesn't use his strength, show his strength to save the day. He shows his humanity. So, yeah. So yeah, I've talked about the MCU, yeah, and I'm excited for the movies like Shang-Chi, where they are gonna give spotlight of turn like characters who aren't A-listers into A-listers, like Shang-Chi and others. The Black Widow movie, I cannot wait to see that movie, in which it's been long overdue. And yeah, and I really appreciate Black Widow's overall story in the MCU, how she has evolved. And I thought that was so cool, and how we got to know her. And she's basically like, she's kind of like Wolverine, an edgy superhero in which emotionally distant, but, you know, got to become, you know, come closer emotionally, and has like shady baggage, and came from had a past in which they hurt people and they regret it. So, okay. That's all of the MCU and my journey. And just, you know, I just thank you, Kevin Feige and all those in Marvel Studios, for like making quite a bit of my childhood, and also for just enjoying those films and treating the characters, the themes, the stories with such reverence. Because I just really love it. Love the Avengers so much. The Marvel movies. And I cannot wait to see what you do with Fantastic Four and X-Men. And many other characters. And please do a Deadpool Spider-Man movie where they're a buddy movie. I would love to see that. Base it off of the current series of like Spider-Man and Deadpool. But yeah. So the themes of the Avengers that I really cling to and love is like basically heroes alone, they can't do it, of facing huge mega threats. That it's when they're together, united as one. That's what I love basically. And this is true for all heroes, where basically each hero has their own limitations and they're broken in their own way. As in they have flaws. And they all come together as like pieces of a puzzle to form a whole. And where they put aside their egos and differences against darkness and fear. So yeah, also that the Avengers represents an organization where anyone can join. And that it's a great honor to be an Avengers. That in the Marvel Universe, it's considered like, you know, it's one thing to be a defender, not slamming them down. Defenders are cool, and so is the X-Men. But the Avengers is basically the Justice League of the Marvel Universe. And they're nothing like the Justice League. They're like the top tier cool, the ultimate superhero team of that universe. And basically, the theme of like, a hero is not alone. No one is ever alone in their battle, and that they have a team. And I remember an interview watching Stan Lee say, you know, yeah, I remember when I did the Avengers, I just thought, you know, thinking of like, if a kid is about to is ganged up by bullies, and he's like, oh man, I'm so screwed. It's like, say, Avengers assemble, and all the Avengers appear. And that's basically what it is. In which what makes it so cool. And I love that battle cry, Avengers Assemble. Because it's a theme of like, no one's ever alone, and that together we are mighty. So, and already talked about Bendis. Yeah, I have a very messy list of the things that I want to talk about. And, yeah, how they're a family and how they deal with problems together and how they support each other. Like, I remember this very poignant issue in which I'm going to be discussing my favorite Avengers runs, in which it takes place after Secret Invasion, where the Skrulls invaded Earth, posed as some heroes, and the Wasp, she died from that whole event, in which she didn't really die. She was just like in Ant-Man and the Wasp 2, she was just in the microverse. And Hank Pym, in which a Skrull impersonated him for like 5 years, and he learns about everything, about Civil War, about Captain America being murdered, and don't worry, he's brought back to life. And so many things like World War Hulk, and so many loss, and Hank is like devastated and broken, learning everything that has happened. And what's funny is he blames Tony Stark, which he got over it. He and Tony are buddies again. But, you know, it's like, this is your fault, Tony, in which he said it at Janet's funeral. And Carol Danvers, Miss Marvel at the time, in which today she's Captain Marvel. You know who I'm talking about. She comforts Hank, as well as Wonder Man, another hero in which I hope they show in the upcoming movies. Because he started out as a villain and became a hero. And it was like, and the whole issue was about like Hank Pym going to Janet's funeral, and just reflect on how he missed 5 years of his life, and just how sad it was, and how the Avengers were fractured from this event, from Secret Invasion and many other things like Civil War. And it was such a great story, and the emotions really came through, in which honestly was one of Brian Michael Bendis' finest comics that he ever made. So yeah, okay, so here are some of my favorite Avengers stories and runs. So I want to kick this off with Avengers vs. X-Men, in which this was an event comic where, and this is where it's set up where Scarlet Witch, she, this is the setup. Scarlet Witch, she went crazy at one point. She said mutants no more because she was having problems. And the mutants became an endangered species where there was only like 200 left. And Cyclops had to like be the leader of all mutant kind and like make sure that all mutants are safe and that they survive. Because no one else was doing anything, not S.H.I.E.L.D., not the Avengers. And the Avengers were supportive, but they were just like cheerleaders on the sidelines, and this would be addressed later in the event. But, and there's this mutant, Scott Summers' granddaughter, that comes from the future, who is proclaimed as the Messiah of the mutants. In which this is a huge deal, and especially where it's tied her destiny of the Phoenix Force, in which the Phoenix Force is this destructive entity that like killed Jean Grey and Cyclops' girlfriend, wife, and how it really messed him up, but he's still willing to like do whatever it takes to save all mutant kind, and he preps his granddaughter, Hope, really hard. And, oh man, what else? And basically, the Avengers see the Phoenix Force coming, and they're like, we know the destructive capabilities this thing has, and how it, like possesses people, and, like, turn them, like, evil. And the Avengers is like, we gotta stop the Phoenix Force from coming. Well, the X-Men, Scott Summers, he's like, we really need this to, like, save mutants, period, because of what Scarlet Witch has done. In which, yeah, Scarlet Witch, when the story starts, is reformed. She got her sanity back, and she's trying to make up for her past sins of doing that. And it turns out Doctor Doom was the one that caused her to go insane. What else? Sorry. It's hard to think of all these things that I've accumulated from the years in my head. So, yeah, and what's interesting is there are two X-Men who are on two separate Avengers teams in which they make a great sacrifice of, like, being on the Avengers side of the whole event, of being like, you know what, no, I'm on the Avengers side. And I'm like, man, that is awesome, and that is interesting. And Captain America went to Wolverine to talk to him about, get his advice on the Phoenix and everything, because he never had to put up with any of this. And Wolverine said, you know what, Scott is messed up. He is a damaged human being in which that thing, the Phoenix Force, has taken more from him than any other person. And you know what? This thing is dangerous, and I don't believe in Cyclops and saying that this will save mutant kind, because Wolverine and Cyclops, they had a falling out, their own little civil war, and they, had the X-Men was split into two. And, so yeah, and Captain America's like, okay. And, like, took Wolverine's side, and basically that's what the whole conflict was. And the conflict ended up is where the Avengers tried to kill the Phoenix Force through, in which Tony Stark created this huge Goliath, like, Iron Man suit that is, like, I would imagine maybe 1/4 of Galactus's size at most to kill the Phoenix Force. Fails, and the Phoenix Force, like, found it was going to go for Hope Summers, but for somehow, some way, it ended up bonding with, like, Cyclops, Emma Frost, Cyclops' girlfriend at the time, Magic, Ilyana Rasputin, Colossus' little sister, Colossus, the man himself, and Namor, in which he is a mutant, in which, yeah, that's true, and that's clever, to, like, explain why he is and what he is. And the Avengers are outlaws, in which everyone is just, like, you know, they're holding their breath, they don't know what to make of these Phoenix Five, and they're basically hunting down the Avengers, and the Avengers are being, they're hiding away at Wakanda. And even world leaders like T'Challa is, like, looking at this and it's like, you know, this is very nerve-wracking. And, you know, all the Phoenix Five are like saving people and, like, trying to make the world a better place, not stepping on anyone's toes. But it was until, you know, they started doing things like Emma Frost started hunting down those who killed mutants and got away with it. And even as someone as simple as a guy in front of his own family. And Emma Frost is afraid, and she's like, Scott, help me. I'm losing my mind to the Phoenix. And she reveals the location of the Avengers to Namor. And Namor is like, you know what, I'm going to go in, take a tidal wave, and just use it to, like, bring it down on Wakanda. And it did. And with what the Phoenix Five did, the X-Men that were true to Cyclops and his vision, they turned on him and went to the Avengers to help. And even Charles Xavier, he came and he's like, you know, this is all wrong of what Cyclops is doing. And Captain America, through the whole experience, how he's so moved by Charles Xavier, his dream, and how he regrets how he failed his students, and where he viewed them as his own children. Of like, of all the things I've done, I mean, I've caused such a shift within the X-Men. I should have been there more. And oh boy. And Captain America cried, so moved by Charles Xavier, and he realized that he should have done more for mutant kind. He should have helped more. And he's like, I'm going to make this right. And so each of the Phoenix Five are being taken down. And the Phoenix like goes to the rest of the remaining Phoenix Five that aren't taken down, and it's all down to Cyclops. He becomes like Dark Phoenix version of himself, and it takes his granddaughter from the future, Hope, and Scarlet Witch to take him down and to destroy the Phoenix Force by saying Phoenix no more. And by doing that, mutants are coming back again in a big way. They're no longer an endangered species, which is awesome. And and it's so interesting because I love events, and yet I hate events as well, because the changes that happen, they're not permanent long term, but the changes that happen, they are like, man, new status quo. I want to see this. New status quo. I cannot wait to see this. And, some of the fallouts were Cyclops. He went to prison. Cyclops and he killed Professor Xavier. All of the X-Men hate and don't trust him. Most of them do. And whoever has been touched by the Phoenix Force, even that are mutants, even touched or messed with, that their powers are messed with. Their powers are out of control and they can't control them. And Cyclops is in jail. He gets out and he starts this whole mutant revolution and proclaims as himself the head of the new revolution, in which he's a broken man that can't control his own powers, in which that's a secret. And Magneto joins his group and is a double agent for S.H.I.E.L.D. to like spy for them on Scott Summers, because he hates Scott for killing Xavier, his best friend. And other changes is that Storm and Black Panther, they were married and they got a divorce after what happened. And Black Panther didn't want to, but his High Council, they demanded it after what happened, and mutants are no longer welcomed at Wakanda. And Black Panther has a rivalry with Namor, hates Namor for like killing so many Wakandans and destroying Wakanda. And so yeah, there's that. And Captain America wants to carry on Charles Xavier's dream, in which he forms a new team of Avengers in a run called Uncanny Avengers, where half of the team is X-Men and the other half is the Avengers, in which the lineup is Wolverine, Rogue, Captain America, Havoc, Scarlet Witch, and Thor. And again, the run is done by Rick Remender, and he's one of my favorite writers, and that is a run that I love, in which basically seeing the dynamic of like the X-Men and the Avengers working well with each other while trying not to kill each other. Especially Rogue, because she blames Scarlet Witch for everything that has happened, especially with Cyclops, of blaming her for turning him insane. And they have a fight, and Scarlet Witch is like, you know what? I used to feel bad and whatever, but I'm so tired of this martyrdom crap about Scott Summers. He is no martyr. And this was at the gravesite of Charles Xavier, and how Wolverine, he gives a eulogy to Charles Xavier, and he frankly says to everyone, all the X-Men, he's like, you all expect me to say, you know, we've all done well, we made him proud. I'm not going to say that. We've done the exact opposite of that. And everyone looks horribly saddened and ashamed of what they've done, everyone. And it's like, we need to do better and follow his dream. And and it's interesting where Wolverine, he is the leader of the X-Men, and he's the one that's like, along with Captain America, trying to keep Charles Xavier's dream alive and well. And I just thought, that is so cool. And it's so interesting because Wolverine started out as the guy's like, oh, I'm a loner, I want nothing to do with you all, to being the one where he's the leader of the X-Men. He has to take care of everything, where he leads the school. He's the principal. And it's just so interesting. I love to seeing how Wolverine evolved so much into this huge role model of like, kind of like Iron Man in the MCU, and how Cyclops like de-evolved, but don't worry, he went back to normal, went back to being good. But what else do I yeah, there were like tons of things that happened, like but yeah, and I remember that Captain America and Wolverine went to talk to Cyclops when he went to jail, and Cyclops like, well, turns out this turned out well for everyone, where for both the Avengers and the X-Men. And not Charles Xavier, Captain America is like, no, you don't get to turn this into a win. You killed Charles Xavier. Because of you, relationships, marriages have been destroyed, and trust has been like gone away and whatnot. So, yeah, and Captain America turns to Wolverine as an equal partner and he says, "Is there anything you want to say?" And I love that, where Wolverine and Captain America are partners in this, and they look to each other of like keeping like Charles Xavier's dream alive. And Wolverine says, "No, I have nothing to say because I have a eulogy to give," which is Charles Xavier's eulogy. And I'm just like, that was so cool. And the way this story was done, it was basically the top writers at Marvel, they all had their turns, as well as artists, of like, where they do one part of the story, issue one, and they hand the next issue to another team of writers and artists, in which it's a Robinson style, in which I heard, in which I love that kind of storytelling. And I've done something like that for short fiction writing in high school, and it's so fun and it's so cool. But yet they were so well organized about it, and I thought that was like so cool, because you can imagine that kind of storytelling would get out of control. But yeah, I just thought it was so cool. But yeah, Uncanny Avengers. And another favorite run of mine is Secret Avengers, Rick Remender's run, in which brought in Agent Venom and Flash Thompson's character, and I loved it. And it dealt with like how AIs robots are are beings, especially cyborg ones, and how the cyborgs, the AIs, are like basically ending up being like terrorists, like trying to convert everyone to being a robot through mutiny. And the original robot of the Marvel Universe is the original, what's it called? What's his name? The original Human Torch. And the Human Torch is the one that used the device to destroy everything and killed almost all the robots and cyborgs. And he feels guilty because he is basically their grandfather. And no other hero could make that choice to like stop the mutiny. And again, just, and I love it how Rick Remender, and and I've noticed this, and then I realized, and I pay attention more, is like other creators have been doing this too. Like throughout their various runs, they've been planting seeds for them. Like it's all connected. All the runs they do, it's all connected, like story wise. And I thought, man, genius. And the story of the Secret Avengers end, where Captain America goes to for the debriefing from the Secret Avengers, and they're like, "Okay, tell me what happened," and they're all taking their cup of coffee, and they're like emotionally and physically wrecked from everything that has happened because it became a worldwide event that it involved every single superhero around the world. And I was like, man, that is so good. Another run I love is Hickman's run with his Avengers Illuminati and the Avengers with Avengers World. Again, brilliantly constructed. Again, he is such a genius that I can't fathom everything that he does. I mean, like with Alan Moore. I mean, no one can even reproduce the kind of genius that they do. I mean, seriously. So it starts where the Illuminati is a group of like top tier superheroes where they decide things of like do the shady business that no one else will to like save humanity. And it's always been like Namor, Iron Man, Charles Xavier, Black Bolt, Doctor Strange, and Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic. And Black Panther never joined because he's like, this is insanity. That what you guys are doing here is amoral. Because once you do this, you guys are going to become the villains. And in which case, it actually turned true for this story, because what happened is, and Captain America was brought into this, and this was after Avengers vs. X-Men, where Beast takes his place. Black Panther, after what happened to Wakanda, joined the group, and Namor is still on the group, and he says to Namor, and I guess the Avengers, they're like, you know what, we've suffered too much, we can't afford another fight. And it's like, we're not publicly gonna still work with him. And Black Panther's like, when this is all said and done, I am gonna kill you for what you did to my country. And Namor, being a smug jerk, is like, oh yeah, I love to see you try. I look forward to it. What else? And Beast took the place of Professor Xavier. And basically, they come across this problem in which, for some reason, parallel Earths are coming together and smashing into each other, killing everyone. And it turns out later down, it's revealed that Beyonders are doing this, in which they're like godlike entities, in which the engines, the batteries for like the Beyonders, and also for the multiverse, is each Earth's own version of a what is his name? He's this absurd character, but but yet he's like totally powerful. I'm trying to remember, but where there are these power engines. Molecule Man. Yeah, Molecule Man. Yeah, so the Illuminati, they bring in Captain America. They're trying to prevent everything that is doing this. And in which Captain America is like, okay, here's the thing. We're not going to cross the line and destroy these worlds. We're going to do this where we save everyone, including the other Earths. And America wielded the Infinity Gauntlet to like stop it and buy them time to like reverse it. And all it did was buy the heroes time. That's all it did. Was it bought them time. And the Avengers and the Infinity Gauntlet broke apart, where 5 out of 6 of them were destroyed. The stones, while the one stone just disappeared. And it was at that point, it was really bad. And Captain America is still adamant, and Captain America is ultimately like mind wiped of the whole Illuminati, whole Earth's clashing together by Doctor Strange, in which it was a secret plan in case they have to do things where without Captain America, because they can't have Captain America in their way, and they just end up, while they're trying to solve the problem, they are willing to destroy other Earths that are willing to do their own. And the first Earth that was destroyed, in which that used the machine, was a Black Panther, and Namor is like, with the other heroes are waiting, and Namor is like, what are you waiting for? And Black Panther says, I'm remembering myself for the man that I used to be. And it wasn't an easy choice for them to make. Not a right one, and not an easy one altogether. And I'm just like, man, that was heavy. And it all ties to like Hickman's event, Secret Wars. But yeah, and for the Avengers world, Iron Man keeps Captain America busy, so that way he doesn't remember the Illuminati and what they're facing. It's like, let's expand our Avengers. Let's do an Avengers world and have Captain America in charge of it. Like, expand the roster. And it was like really cool, and just all the stuff. And again, Secret War is when Captain America knows what they did, what Illuminati did. The Avengers are fractured by this. Heck, the whole superhero community is fractured. And only Doctor Doom was able to save everyone and stop the Beyonders. In which that was like a really dark story. And I was like, man, all the heroes failed. And while they're fighting each other and fighting the other Earths, trying to like have an exodus, it was only Doctor Doom that got the results. And it was such an eye-opener, and and really caused the heroes to look at themselves. It's like, you know what, we've done this all wrong. Here is Doctor Doom, one of the Marvel Universe's worst supervillain, one of the worst, and he did what the heroes couldn't. And they redeemed themselves. They saved themselves from Doom's rule, and everything with the whole Illuminati thing was undone, but we still know it happened. And so did the heroes. But yeah, and the Illuminati heroes redeemed themselves. And, I haven't heard anything from the Illuminati club, because I think that was disbanded after what happened. And yeah, and even the Illuminati kind of turned on each other. So yeah, and yeah, Avengers World, I love that. And again, Hickman is a genius. I'm trying to understand everything that he does, but so much of what he does just like goes over my head. Same with Alan Moore. But yeah. Other favorite runs. I love Civil War by Mark Millar. It was so cool, and it was so edgy, and it was at that time in which Marvel was really coming back after bankruptcy, in which they hired the best writers and artists and let them go loose. And in a way, I do kind of miss that time. True, they'd have like horrible failures and all that, and like, whoa, too far, but they'd come up with some of the most incredible stories, the incredible characters and arcs, and everything. It was a really cool time growing up of being a Marvel fan. DC wasn't doing that. DC was like screwing around and just like, heck, they weren't even staying true to the DC material, I feel like. And hence why I was more of a Marvel fan back then. Until like Batman Begins kind of turned me all around. Because I honestly felt like at that time, Marvel were more relatable, the Marvel heroes and whatnot, that I could relate to them and see myself through them and root for them more. While at the time, I viewed the DC's heroes as like Greek gods, basically. Unfeeling, uncaring, like gods, basically. Unchanging, in which I later learned that that is not the case. So yeah, Civil War, in which it's basically it's like the Civil War movie, but it's a lot more epic and a lot more heroes died and all that. And I'll just leave that out. You guys can figure it out. But yeah, it was just so cool and revolutionary of what was happening. And especially the fallout, which is similar to like Avengers versus X-Men. And Secret Invasion, that's another one of my favorites. And Siege, in which after Secret Invasion, in which it was Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin, no joke, in which he's not really the Green Goblin out in public. Because during Iron Man's, run as like the Pro Registration and Avengers Initiative at that time, Norman Osborn was the leader of the Thunderbolts, in which it's a team of supervillains that are reforming them to be superheroes, in which it does so like horribly, like gone wrong, and doesn't always turn out right. So yeah, in which it's pretty horrifying, let me tell you. And Norman Osborn, because he like killed the Skrull Queen, who was the leader of the invasion, in which he was put up by the President of the United States at that time. Not the real president at the time. That'd be insane. But in that world of Marvel, to be like the leader of what was going to take place of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is Hammer, in which S.H.I.E.L.D. is no more, in which it's a nightmare, and have his own Avengers team, in which the book series was called Dark Avengers. And he took on Iron Man's armors and came up with the identity Iron Patriot. And thankfully, Rhodey claimed that identity down the line and gave that title and that identity real justice. But yeah, it all came crashing down, because usually with crazy people, crazy evil villains, they tend to reveal themselves, especially when they're so high in power, that they're like, where it all comes crumbling down. They're their own reason for their own demise. And it's true for people like Norman Osborn. And where his Avengers team is basically a mere dark image of the current Avengers team, in which Daken, hate that guy, Wolverine's son poses as his own Wolverine, and Venom posing as his own version of Spider-Man, but just like Spider-Man in the black costume, no teeth, no nothing. No one knows that it's Venom. And Bullseye is Hawkeye. And Miss Marvel is played by another villain. That would be, Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel. And so it comes to where Norman Osborn leads Hammer and his Dark Avengers into invading Asgard, which they're set up on Earth, not touching the ground, like a floating little castle, which it was really cool. And basically take it on, and is killing so many gods and everyone, even the president at the time in the Marvel Universe, Barack Obama, is like, okay, Norman Osborn just lost this. He should have gone over this with me because they're not a threat. We don't want to start a war with Asgard, and yeah, and Captain America, Steve Rogers, who's brought back from the dead, like the Avengers reunite and are made whole again from like Civil War and whatnot. So like Iron Man back in his old classic armor, which is really cool, and Thor, the Avengers are back. And they come to aid Asgard from Norman Osborn and Hammer. And basically, the story ends where everything is all made right, but there are some crazy, insane stuff that happens in that story. So, really crazy stuff, and that and I love it that Spider-Man was the one, and I appreciate Bendis doing this. Spider-Man is the one to get the last punch on Osborn, in which they took off his armor and helmet, and it turns out Norman Osborn is wearing green face paint to represent he's still the Green Goblin. And he's like all acting all crazy, and Spider-Man's like so sick of it because he's been through so much dealing with Osborn, and he yells, "Shut up!" and just punches him in the face. And Captain America is the one that holds Spider-Man back and is like, "Hey, don't kill him. That's enough." In which I wish Spider-Man was more of the forefront of the fight and the resistance against Norman Osborn and his Dark Avengers. I honestly wish that. In which Captain America was the only one, as well as Luke Cage and Winter Soldier. But I wish Spider-Man was more forefront and center, and the Avengers and Captain America went to him and was like, what should we do? Pay more respect to Spider-Man, because I feel like it's frustrating because it feels like Spider-Man's treated as an afterthought. Like an annoying intern. And I'm like, oh, why do you do that? You could have had Spider-Man at a more prominent role. In which there was an issue where he says, where the Avengers were considering what Hawkeye said. It's like, Norman Osborn is basically Hitler. We ought to just kill him. And Spider-Man's like, no, we don't kill. I've been down this road. No, we don't. And Hawkeye's like, I'll tell you this. You should have killed him when you were in high school. And it says, no, knock it off. We don't kill. And Hawkeye realizes that Spider-Man is right. But yeah, I wish Spider-Man was more of a leading role in that. But yeah, it all ended where Asgard, true, it's destroyed, but it got to rebuild from help from Stark Industries, Tony Stark, and the Avengers. And that basically old wounds are healed and the Avengers are made once more. It was honestly so beautiful to see that. So beautiful. And yeah, and I will tell you this, some characters did die, and I'm like, holy crap. So yeah, you ought to check it out. But another Avengers run that I love so much is the New Avengers by Brian Michael Bendis. Because after Marvel's bankruptcy, Marvel took in like two indie guys, Brian Michael Bendis and Mark Millar, and basically said, okay, what do we ought to do to make Marvel relevant and cool? And even Joe Quesada was one of the head leaders of that, because Marvel kind of lost its way. And it's like, Marvel is the world outside of your window, where you can see it. It takes place in the real world. It reflects the real world of what's going on and everything. And honestly saved Marvel. And they were able to experiment and do so many things that is considered canon now in Marvel and whatnot, and in the MCU. In which I am so grateful, because the MCU, in which they decided to stick with stories that happened from the current Marvel comics. In which I thought, you know what, that's cool and that's important because not to just adapt only old storylines, in which I felt like movies before only did that. In which I think that's kind of just wrong. Just like try and just adapt old material and just ignore everything that's happening now. I thought that was important. In which, for quite a long time, the Marvel writers and artists, okay, only the Marvel writers and Joe Quesada were all involved in the MCU in phases 1 and 2. In which I'll tell you, you know, short story made short. They've been supporting them and been like the House of Ideas and like the Brainwave Storm to work with Marvel Studios. But it all went away when, and I don't blame the House of Ideas for this, because the stock owner, business guy that owned them is like, hey, if you guys value your jobs, you're gonna like take my side on all this. Of like Kevin Feige was going for like, hey, I need more of a budget boost and permission to use Ant-Man and Spider-Man, I think, in which it totally paid off because it made the movie and that action scene so much better, especially with that Giant Man part. And so yeah, and I understand because you know what, the media placed them as the bad guys, the House of Ideas, and at first I was angry at them, but then I realized because Brian Michael Bendis and because I was like, man, Brian Michael Bendis, I thought you were this cool guy that was all against like, because I viewed Mark Millar, Joe Quesada, and the other writers and artists as like a bunch of punk rock kind of guys, in which they're basically these pirates in these old-fashioned sense, like rawr, we make our own way kind of deal, and we follow our own we follow our own path. He's like, screw continuity and screw old-fashioned dictatorship and whatnot. I know it sounds silly, but I used to view it like that. But yeah, and Mark Millar, I think he wasn't in the House of Ideas when it was no longer part of the Marvel Studios brain trust. But yeah, it was all because of that, and Kevin Feige, thank goodness that the CEO, Bob Iger, said, you know what, yeah, sure, I'll give you that budget, and that Kevin Feige would from now on report only to Bob Iger, in which, yeah, that is awesome. But, you know, honestly, they just did it for their own jobs, and even Brian Michael Bendis said, it was part of my job, I had to go along with it, and, you know, I signed a contract that I can't mention or say everything that has happened. And that, and, you know, I totally respect that. But, you know, but I did view, like, Brian Michael Bendis, not so much more now as, like the punk rock of the times, like, hip and, like, the whole rebellion thing. It was, like, pirates in the old-fashioned sense, as I already stated, of like, yeah, screw the man, take it up to the man. I know that sounds ridiculous, and at that time I viewed DC as the man, as like, yeah, but I'll tell you a story about later of like how DC turned me around and whatnot. But, hang on, let me write that down. So, yeah, and back to New Avengers. So, Bron- uh, yeah, where Mark Millar, sorry, he said, you know, as a kid, I always loved to get Justice League because, in a way, because comic books were like 12 cents, and I could get like, Wonder Woman, Batman, and Superman. They all had their own books, but with the Justice League book, I could get all of my favorite heroes all for 12 cents, all the coolest heroes ever, and that sparked an idea, and Joe Quesada and all the others talked about what is the coolest, hippest heroes of this time that we can put on the Avengers. And at the time, it was obvious: Spider-Man and Wolverine. And there was a lot of debate between them, but then they all agreed. And it was controversial at the time, but I honestly loved it because it made the Avengers that much more welcoming and cool to me because because, it's proven. And before the Guardians of the Galaxy was a well-known household name, Brian Michael Bendis' run on Guardians, he had Iron Man as one of the members early on to like give the team credibility for the books, and and it totally worked. I saw stories and dynamics that were just so rad and just so cool, and made me really invested in the Avengers and in the relationships between the characters. And that's what I love more than anything, is just like the relationships between the characters and how they progress, and how the dynamic of the team works. So yeah, and that's cool. So yeah, the new Avengers, it all started out with like after Scarlet Witch, her first stage of craziness, not before the No More Mutants thing, as I mentioned. But yeah, the lineup of the team is Spider-Woman, Jessica Drew, Luke Cage, Sentry, Iron Man, Captain America, Spider-Man, and Wolverine. And there were some great moments on that run in which, man, I'll tell you this, Bendis' run on the Avengers has to be one of, if not the longest, or just as long, or maybe not as long as Hickman's run. It was that incredible. I mean, it was like 10 years worth of stories, in which I can't believe all the things that Brian Michael Bendis has done, how much Joe Quesada has done, and Mark Millar. So yeah. And another, and this is my last favorite Avengers run that I love, and they're not even called Avengers. It's in the Ultimate Universe, where it takes place, the Ultimate Universe, in which it's to bring in new readers and revamp Marvel. And hang on a sec, sorry. All right, I'm back. So and I thought it was such a cool concept made by Brian Michael Bendis and Mark Millar, of like basically, because at that point, and it's an issue even today of like there's so much continuity, so much in which continuity was baggage of like for all the readers to catch up on. And I'll tell you how I learned to like deal with this. But basically, they just took everything, started it all over again, and took like the designs and the ideas that Stan Lee and the artists had for the Marvel Universe and just start all over again and apply it to every day and age at early 2000. And it was a huge success at a point that it even like made its way into video games and movies. And I'll tell you this, yeah, Ultimate Spider-Man was like really awesome, as well as like Ultimate X-Men and the Ultimates, which is the Avengers, in which they didn't go by Avengers in that world, in which at the time I understood that. I was like, Ultimates is a cooler name, but now looking at that, I'm like, yeah, I like Avengers better, but Ultimates is really cool. So, yeah, and Ultimate Fantastic Four, as much as I liked it, I hated, only because of the disgusting Fantastic Four reboot, in which nothing to do with the actors, but because of how the movie was such a hot mess. I'm just such a hot mess. Not even in a pretty way. I saw it and I'm like, oh. So yeah. And what's funny is Mark Millar, and this isn't his fault, though maybe story-wise it's his fault, because it's based off of his Ultimate Fantastic Four run, him and Bendis's, where he's like, just take from the Ultimate run and just go with it. You'll be fine. But, alright, so, yeah, the Ultimates. So, basically, everything with Captain America stayed the same, though Mark Millar's version, he was, like, a lot more aggressive, and he wasn't afraid to beat up on bad guys or whatever, fight dirty, like literally beat them up. In which I'm glad they kind of turned that around later, because, yeah, that's not the Captain America that I know. But what's interesting is that for Iron Man, true, he has alcoholism and he stopped making weapons. He changed his mind because he was dying because he had a tumor in his brain, to help make weapons for the good guys, for S.H.I.E.L.D. And it was like, because at the time, Marvel dealt with like issues and things that everyday people were coming up doing at its inception in the 60s. Marvel was always like current and always like reflective of the times. And I was like, wow, that was like really intense so yeah. And Thor is like this basically, this prophet of a group where he claims to be Thor, claims to be a god. Not everyone believes him except for this group that follows him and whatnot. And people, even the teammates on the Ultimates, don't believe that he can do the things that he does, except for Iron Man. Because Iron Man forms a very strong relationship with Thor. And I thought that was really cool. So yeah, who else was on the team? Giant Man, Hank Pym, in which, I gotta be honest, he was a real scumbag in this universe. In which, I'll tell you about that later. And Janet Van Dyne, Wasp, in which it was interesting, in which, in the comics, it was Hank Pym that gave her powers, but this was the secret in the Ultimate Universe, in which it made it seem like, just like the comics, the main continuity, main Marvel universe, that she got her powers from Hank Pym, but really she's a mutant, and that it was a thing that she hid from the team and from the public because they were so publicly beloved. And the Ultimates was gathered together by the by the United States government and run by it. Kind of like how the Avengers movie started, of like S.H.I.E.L.D. formed them together, in which that's what happened. And it was really cool. And the Hulk, it wasn't so much as gamma radiation that created him. It was the failed attempt of a super soldier serum. And this Hulk was more intense. He killed like people, and he even ate a bad guy alive and whatnot. So yeah, whatever you do, if you plan on buying comic books or whatnot, make sure you know what you're actually going to get yourself into, or better yet, wait for me to let you know what to do and what to buy and what not to buy for a certain age group or whatever. But yeah, and there was a time that Hulk even like took a whole tank of beer and just drank it. Like, no joke, it was wild. Mark Millar is all about anarchy and craziness. But yeah, and oh, what else? And the Ultimates of that time was very reflective of this area, dealing with like authority and like the world's stance on terrorism. And yeah, it was just like very real world, and it was so cool. Okay. But that's it. But one Avengers story that I love so much is when Iron Man and the Hulk have a dare with each other that they can lead their own team of Avengers or whatever, or they can like solve this problem that they're doing, and that the loser basically have to walk naked from Avengers Tower to the Fantastic Four building. And it was so funny. It turns out they both lost, and the Hulk is like so uncomfortable, and he says to Iron Man, "I'm not very comfortable with this." And Iron Man's like, "Don't worry, buddy, I got you covered. I got this gadget that won't let anyone take a photo or anything of us." And Captain Marvel's like, "Well, good thing I had this guy come in." And it's Spider-Man with his old camera from his time at the Daily Bugle as a reporter. He's like, "Say cheese!" And Iron Man and Hulk are like, with fear in their face, like lunging towards Spider-Man, trying to stop him. And he takes their picture and sends it to the Daily Bugle. It was so funny. I just love that. And if I were to come up with my own Avengers team, it just, with what Bendis did on New Avengers, I thought, you know what, that is so cool that you can come up with your own Avengers team. And it's become canon ever since. And I just thought, I'd want to do that. And I'll tell you in just a minute, but another story I love is when Spider-Girl is learning from the Avengers and basically like visiting the Avengers and asking for their help. And she gets to like team up with each Avenger hero until she teams up eventually with all of them. And there are great moments where she says to some of them, "I hate you. You drive me nuts." And all that. Only because they were like on pheromones or whatever from a character. It was really cool. But here we go. So my Avengers list, and I'm going a little bit crazy. These are people that I have not seen on an Avengers team that I think they would totally kill it. That's just me and the story idea I have. And maybe I'll do it as like a short story or whatever on my blog, but as a comic book. But my Avengers team, it'll be led by Beta Ray Bill, in which he's the guy to make sure everything goes well because Thor trusts him and sets him up to watch over this team. But the leader of the team and of its dynamics is Loki. No joke. Yeah, I know, how crazy. And it's followed by Fing Fang Foom, Gamora, Scarlet Spider, Kane, the Kane version, Venom, Eddie Brock, Spider-Ham. I know. And basically their wild card, in which basically their wild dog on rabies that they have on a loose leash on that Venom totally disagrees with and hates, in which it's Carnage. In which not even the Thunderbolts will accept Carnage or try to, what is that term? Oh, rehabilitate him, because they won't even touch him. Because I was inspired by how at one point the Avengers had Sabretooth as an Avenger, where he redeemed himself, and he was a very loose cannon, more loose than Wolverine. And crazy. And I just think, what would happen if Carnage got out and he like started hunting down his own Avengers team within the Avengers Tower? And I just thought that'd be just so cool. And I just love it. So yeah, that's my team. And most of the Avengers team are a redemption team, because Avengers have teammates in which characters that redeemed themselves, in which Black Widow redeemed herself. Red Hulk, regular Hulk, and other characters that redeemed themselves. And that'd be very interesting considering the the leader that of the team is Loki, while Beta Ray Bill, he's the bigger leader, makes sure that everything goes well. Where Loki and the others are trying to redeem themselves. All except for Spider-Ham, in which he's there for levity and for fun, to keep things fun and simple. I mean, I want to hear from you. What would be 7 characters, or you can go 1 over or 2 over, whatever. I'm not going to get after you. I want to hear, what would you guys have on your own Avengers team? I want to hear, because it could be anyone from, like, in the Marvel Universe to anyone from DC, Image, heck, even your own mom, whatever. I want to know. I want to hear. Tell me who would be on your Avengers team, and also what would the dynamic be like. And please like, comment, subscribe, and share this channel with your friends. We want to share this fun that we're having with everyone. Okay. And one last thing. Oh yeah, so for this game, it has comic covers, and let me tell you, for the video games, I don't know if I've already covered this. It's cool and all that you could collect stuff, like coins or whatever, to like collect comic covers, like, oh wow, these are actual comics or whatever. In which it's cool, but now in this day and age, in which I kind of frown upon, especially in this game, because Beanox did this one thing in which it's cool, but then I realized, you know what? Okay, I'll tell you what it is. Sorry, real quick. I go really fast. Basically, it's like, not only do you get the comic book cover, but you get to read it in game. In which, as a kid, I loved, younger, I loved that, but you know, growing up, I'm like, you know what? No. Whatever time I have to play my video game is precious time. I'm not going to spend it, like, reading a comic book because, you know, unless it's a comic that I can't get anywhere else. But, you know, it's cool, but still, it's frustrating, especially with the controller. Because for a controller, I use a controller to play a video game, not to play a movie. Not to watch a movie, not to play video games. But yeah, that's me. And, oh boy. What else is there? Sorry. Boy. This is getting very hard for me to think, because I'm running out of ideas to talk about. But, yeah, I honestly think, and this is just me, the idea I have is like, if you're going to do collectibles, sure, do a comic cover, but do it a comic cover to a level or whatever, a secret story arc. That'd be really cool. Or heck, even do like a cinematic cover or whatever. Because I remember in Marvel Imperfects, I hated that game so much, that they had these they had a motion comic with a narrator that covered the first 5 issues of Ultimate Spider-Man and Ultimate Fantastic Four and Ultimate X-Men. And I'm like, why not do that instead? At least that way it's so much more where they're not having all the work here. So yeah, I remember playing that first level right there that I died of. It was really tough. I learned I had to really build up my leveling and everything to work that out. But also another thing I want you guys to comment on is, what are your Avengers favorite Avengers stories, comic books, movies, cartoon shows, whatever. I want to know from you what the Avengers mean to you, how you love the MCU. Please, I want to hear your story. And possibly, and you know what, I will work hard to do this, I want to read some of your stories. Share it with the future audiences and future videos. So, my favorite Spider-Man, not Spider-Man, Avengers show is Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes. Because the Avengers never really got hardly any TV show. Uh, well, and when they do, in which in the 90s, it was a really bad one. In which what I heard, and I'm not going to watch it, because one, it just looks... it was a show that just tried too hard. That it looked like it tried too hard. But Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, it took things from the MCU and regular Marvel universe and like adapted them, but made it off of the look of the main Marvel universe. It was really cool, and I love it. The stories they told, I mean, the people behind the show were some of the same people that worked on X-Men Evolution, Wolverine and the X-Men, and some of them even worked in the Batman the Animated Series. And they told such great stories, and and it was so painful to watch that show go like Spectacular Spider-Man for like Avengers Assemble and Ultimate Spider-Man. I try to like Avengers Assemble. Ultimate Spider-Man I got to like because it's just, I view it as like a Mickey Mouse cartoon short, and which it is cool, but for Avengers Assemble I feel like all it is just superhero fights, no contacts, no growth, nothing to like really relate to the characters on a human level, no stories that made you think or really challenge the story or the characters going forward. It was like cookie dry, clean and quick. It was like, we're the best friends. It's like Super Friends, and I'm like, oh, I can't handle that. Of like a story that like tries to like be so on the nose and try to like dictate you of like what's right and wrong. It's like, always do this, kids. Always do this. Or I'm trying to think of it. I can't remember. I've been busy with stuff, especially starting a new week on college, so take it easy on me, please. But yeah, I love Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, where it's an evolving roster, in which I think that is so cool and so important. So, in which Young Justice took that idea, but I think, and I've heard they kind of spread themselves a little bit too thin in season 3. Yeah, I've seen season 1 and 2, but I don't have DC all DC Universe app, not yet anyway. But yeah, so the roster starts with like how it was when the characters first came out, in which it's like the Avengers comics started with Hulk, Thor, Iron Man, Wasp, and Ant-Man. So yeah, and then things happened where Hulk went away, and Captain America was found and thawed out, and he joined the team. Then Black Panther, and then the Hulk returns with Hawkeye, and just like that. And in season 2, the team is unrecognizable, where Hulk, he goes away, and Miss Marvel joins. And yeah, and other teams. The Avengers is constantly evolving and reforming, in which that's fantastic because that's what an organization is. And yeah, and they adapted like great stories, like Secret Invasion. They hinted to like Civil War, in which they never really did. The Powerless story, in which Captain America and Iron Man and Thor, they're stripped of their powers by Loki, and they become and they prove that it's not the powers that makes them heroes; it's their humanity that makes them heroes. In which I thought that was like so cool. And yeah, and and I do hope one day Disney, Marvel, if you're listening to this, since you guys can't do anymore those Avengers Assemble shows, in which, to be honest, I wanted to like them, and I've been nothing but an avid supporter of you guys, please bring back Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes. Considering you're all done basically with Avengers Assembled. Bring back, like, Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes. Get rid of that garbage Marvel Spider-Man show of just so cringeworthy. Bring back Spectacular Spider-Man. Bring back Wolverine and the X-Men. And do a Fantastic Four show and a Guardians show that they're all really good. The Guardians show you guys had was semi-good. I'm going to be honest. It was okay, but not the best. And just take the storytelling seriously. Because I honestly miss the time of like Fox Kids, 90s cartoons of like where kids weren't treated as idiots, or basically the shows were made actually really good where they'd want to sit down and just actually watch it and speak to him on an equal level with like cool rock music and cool mature themes and good acting, in which the Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, Wolverine and the X-Men, and Spectacular Spider-Man were an unofficially shared universe at that time. So yeah, please bring that back, and please, Marvel Animations, just please, yeah, no more cringe-worthy stuff. Stay true to the characters, please. And do stories where great human stories. Alright, aim for what the greats did. That's all I want to say. But you know what? I honestly think that you can do it. I mean, it'd be something totally different because we haven't seen those shows in like 4 years or longer than that. So yeah, please bring it back. So, this is me, Andrew David, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to tell you my last name. Sorry. Pretend you didn't hear that. This is Superhero Gaming with Andrew. Thank you for your time. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and share with your friends, and stay tuned for more shows. Thank you very much. Bye!